to the second episode of Just Your Average Joel podcast. We have an ordinary guy who had an extraordinary experience. I'll turn it over to Joel.
Thank you. Nice to see you all again. I'm Joel. This is the Average Joel podcast. I'm here with my lovely wife, Jennifer. We're going to get into this today. We're both in recovery. Let me start with that. We did that a little bit in the introduction last week. Jen's been sober 27 years. I've been sober 30 years. And what we want to get into is Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps, kind of the function, what is supposed to be happening, the experience that's supposed to happen, and not to be too critical, but we see a lot of this isn't happening. So it's a little funny, we watch and we see, and they even got like smart recovery now, which is, I think the percentage and the rate of what they're doing is close to Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's reasons why. So I'm going to briefly go through a few things fairly quickly. One thing is, in the beginning of the book, they have what they call the basic text. And in that basic text, it talks about, right from pretty much Jump Street, but it talks about in the solution, there's different chapters, but one of them talks about, it says the essential psychic change. It starts talking right away about a consciousness, about transformation, and it refers back many times to a spiritual experience. That is really the goal. The goal of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step programs are to bring about a spiritual awakening, to bring about a transformation and bring about a relationship. So there's a part in the book on page 25, it talks about the great fact. And it says this and nothing less, and I'm paraphrasing, but it says, basically, we've had deep spiritual experiences, which has revolutionized our attitude towards God, towards our fellows, and towards the world. And that is transformative. That is internal. They talk about it being an inside job, much more. And then they talk again of the vital spiritual experience, the essential psychic change. On page, what is it? Oh, the 42 stories. They say, well, listen, we have 42 stories, personal stories from their own viewpoint, how they established their relationship with God. So the whole thing is about establishing that relationship. What we hear a lot nowadays is, it can be a group of drunks, or it could be, right, these other things that really cannot transform a person from the inside out. And it's much more about religion than it is about transformation. It's, they say we're not a religious organization, but then everybody's treating it like a religion. The big book Alcoholics Anonymous is really to get a relationship. Relationship and religion are very different. I got a little thing here I'll read to you about. No, we got somebody else in here. Oh, there it is. Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer. Religion is a structured system of beliefs, rituals, rules used to approach a higher power, often focusing on obedience, corporate worship. In contrast, a relationship with God is a personal, intimate, heart-centered connection focused on love, trust, daily communication, not just duty. A lot is what's going on in Alcoholics Anonymous. A lot of it is, that's what's happening. It's more a religion. It goes into other things. Religion, often an outward experience and rituals. They do a lot of ritualistic stuff, a lot of things. A relationship is a matter of the heart and an inward transformation. Big difference. And that's what the big book Alcoholics Anonymous is talking about, is about a transformation, about a psychic change, about, and it's funny, we go to the meetings, Jen and I go to the meetings, and there are people, I'm talking people with 40, 50 years of sobriety, and they talk a lot about, well, they're not supposed to believe yet, and this will come about, and all. It's really not set up that way. Just so you know, the 12 steps are not set up that way. On page 63, this is right out of the gate. When you make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, we agnostics is a chapter that convinces you. What is the convince that you're going to need a God? That you're going to have power.
Not to be agnostic.
Not to be agnostic, right? It's to not be agnostic. Exactly. So you're going to need a power because this is beyond, and it's weird because, and Jen knows a lot about the history, and we're going to refer to her a lot about the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, but they were, if you read how they talk about it, they talk much more in a humble sense about God. They're like, hey, listen, we know only a little. Ask your God in your morning meditation. They refer to God all the time. they constantly divert to God and bring it to God. So here's one of the things of on page 6. It says on 63. It says, as we become conscious of His presence, we begin to lose fear. Today, tomorrow, and the hereafter, we were reborn. This is step 3. People would think, fifth, whatever. They're talking about that. How are you going to do a fearless moral inventory if you're full of fear? If you don't get that God shot, if you don't get that bump, if you can't see through kind of like almost a little break from your ego, to see yourself. Then on 72, it says, we begin to a new relationship, a new attitude. It says we were trying to get a new relationship and a new attitude with our Creator. And these are the things that we discovered in our path. So on page 72, this is now after you've done your 4-step, it gets into why are we doing this? We're doing this to find the 4-step, find the obstacles that are in my path from this relationship. I'm cut off. I'm blocked off. I have a spiritual malady. That's what this is about. This is spiritual malady. They say when the spiritual matter is remedied, you straighten out mental and physical. Everybody's got that a lot backward. Oh, physical, mental. They get everything else first, like Jen will say, right? What is it? ABCs, apartment, babe, car. And then the next thing you know, they go out. They do stuff on the outside, nothing on the inside. So when the transformation happens, you're on your way. And then on page, so look, you get to that point, what you're seeking. So if I'm not seeking God, how are these spiritual experiences that they're talking about in the big book, in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous and the transformation, how is that going to come about? Like on page, Jen, if you'd read that for me, it's on the bottom of 75. I want to just get into, and I'm just getting into this quick, like we're not even into steps that fast or quick, and we'll see what's happening within 6-7 steps on that part on 75. Can you read that for me, Jen?
Once we have taken the step withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone with perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are walking on the broad highway, hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know Him better.
I mean, this is what happens in 6 steps. That's 6 steps. That is the 6th step there. When we come home, because of getting some of this garbage out of the way, we start feeling that connection with God. We're transformed. Now, remember, we're going to go into a place where we're in the 7th step. It talks about as we go out and do your bidding. Now, how am I going to go out and do God's bidding if I'm still the same guy? There's got to be a transformation. People talking Alcoholics Anonymous, they're 9, 10. Oh, I had experience at 9th step. My sponsor was doing mine, right? Jen knows a lot about this. Like, it's basically their 9th step is done by their sponsor and not by them. It's like, I have to be the one that's transformed. I got to be the person that has a God within me doing these things, bringing these things about. So, I just want to bring it to there quickly. I remember what Jen used to say, when you first got to Alcoholics Anonymous, what did you do? You just read the back?
Like a good alcoholic, steps are in order for a reason. I went right to the back of the book. I want to know what to expect, what they're promising me. I went right to the spiritual experience. I knew right from the beginning that this was all about having a relationship with God, having a transformation. And I did. I started studying the history. I read everything on the Oxford group, Shoemaker, Buckman, all the people that started this. The steps came out of the Bible. That's what they used in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So I knew right from the beginning. And it says it right in the front of the book. These are our personal stories that we tell in our own language, how we established a relationship with God. So I realized very quickly this was about establishing a relationship with God. I read the history about Carl Jung and Roland Hazard, where Roland Hazard went and spent time with Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychiatrists of all time back then. He spent a whole year with him, and when he left, he got drunk. He went back to Carl Jung and he said, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I stay sober? And Carl Jung said to him, alcoholic of your type, I've given you the best psychiatry has to offer, and it isn't enough. Alcoholics of your type, every once in a while, here and there, they get sober and they have these big religious conversion experiences that transform them, and they don't drink anymore. And Roland Hazard was a religious man. So he said to Carl Jung, good, I'll go back. I'll go back to my church. And Carl Jung told him, you are a religious man. You've been in church. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something deeper than just going to church, just religion. And so he told Carl Jung told Roland Hazard he needed to have one of these conversion experiences, and that if God didn't reach out and give him one of those bright light experiences, what he had to do is go and put himself in a religious atmosphere and open himself up to God coming in and giving him one of these conversion experiences. So, same thing. I didn't know how I was going to have this, but I knew that's what I needed. I had been in AA, I had been in the fellowship, I had been in the program, and I drank again. So I knew I was the type of alcoholic Carl Jung was talking about, that I needed something more than even what AA offered in the fellowship. I needed something deeper than that. So I knew that right from the beginning.
Exactly. A conversion, like you're saying there, a bright light experience. That's what the 12 steps are supposed to induce, a spiritual experience, slowly, but that is the ultimate goal. I mean, if you get into 10, 11, and 12, it talks about in the 10th step, we've entered into the world of the spirit. It says we're now are trying to be effective and grow in understanding. So this is about enlightenment. This is what they're offering here, is enlightenment.
And one point I'd want to make, I think the problem is when he went back to this so-called religious atmosphere or environment, it was the Oxford group, they were talking about transformation, being reborn. They were talking about sin. They were talking about sin in their life. There's a saying in NA, it says you can't be clean and live dirty. Mm-hmm. And I think, part of the problem is you can't rely on AA to be that atmosphere today, because if you even start talking about God, a lot of times in the meetings they'll say, let's not scare the newcomer off. Let's not talk about, as if God isn't the whole point of the whole program. They actually act like talking about God is against the program. It's wild.
It's wild. Well, a lot of them, it talks about on what level you've lost the ability to control the drink, on what level you'll have to have a spiritual awakening. You're going to have to meet that with that much spirituality. Well, what has happened over years, and this is my opinion, what I think is we've weeded out most of the real alcoholics. And it's funny because the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous talks about real alcoholics, they make a definitive choice. And then on page 26, it says, or the end of 25, it says, if you're seriously alcoholic, as we were, there is no return through human aid. So they make the punctuation like, listen, you're not going to be able to recover. The distinction. And it says probably no human power could relieve their alcohol. God could and would if he was sought. There's one who has all power. That in the 10th step that I did talk about too, that says it again in there. It says a lot has already been said about the one who has all knowledge and all power. But what happens is, and this is what I've seen, this is what I notice, so many people come in and what they don't really need this, they get the fellowship and they get by. And I've seen people want to hang themselves, just so you know, 10 years, 7 years, whatever. But for a while that works. For the guy that's not that desperate, and now they're carrying the mess, basically. They're not carrying the message. They're carrying the powerless over alcohol. They like volleyball, baseball, and fellowship, and all that's good, and meetings, and they're sponsored, but it's not a conversion. It's not a true change in sight. I mean, you should see the world differently. When Chuck C talks about, he says, like, new pair of glasses, he said, I see the world different. This is something that's supernatural, they talk about within ourselves. So that doesn't happen for these people, and they're the ones that are mostly carrying the message. There's a lot more of them than there is of myself. That's for sure, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's the message.
Yeah.
That they're carrying.
Well, and I think a lot of people in AA, it is more. I just always think like a Tony Robbins seminar or something. It's like, let me give you a little, do this, do that, and you'll get your life together. And there's a lot of that. And it's funny because when you read the history, it said they were doing prayer and meditation, and meetings were optional. If you listen to alcoholics today, they worship the meetings, and they say, well, I can't meditate because I'm alcoholic and I have freight train brain. They don't pray. They don't meditate. They go to a lot of meetings. Even in the Big Book, what does it talk about? That the people that were over at war were recovering at a higher rate than the people home going to meetings. Why? Because they were depending more on God. So it's gotten a lot upside down, I think. And the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So the fellowship, the bar to get in is very low. But for recovery, to be recovered from alcoholism, the cure, that essential psychic change, there's a bunch of musts in there. And the alcoholics, they don't like musts.
Right.
They don't like musts, have to, they're always trying to, you don't have to, they try to water it down. They're selling you a lie, really, at the beginning of the...
Well, and this is one of the things I always say about it. It's a synthetic salvation. I'm a Christian. I'll tell you that. My wife's also a Christian. And the reason why I'm a Christian, one of the big reasons why I'm a Christian is because I can't do this. Okay, I need a savior. I remember a guy saying, he goes, I'm so screwed up, I need a bloody savior. I'm not a guy I'm not a Buddhist. I can't just sit there through discipline and self-management. And see, my problem is self. I'm a guy that I need somebody that came into the world to seek the lost and the confused and the downtrodden, or however you want to say it, like myself, that can't do this. And that is the biggest miracle. It's funny because what is the biggest miracle in Alcoholics Anonymous is I'm doing things that are impossible for me to do. Do you understand? I can't do this. I can't do any of this. I'm doing things that are impossible for me to do because I've surrendered and the recognition, which is a lot of the first step. The first step is I'm powerless. And I'm not God. It's hard to find God when you are God, So the first step really opens that up to a surrender. And for me, and it's funny, what you were saying about the people that were new. You think if you joined an organization, you said, well, I'm going to join this organization. Okay, so what's the result of this organization? I'm going to be transformed. I'm going to have a spiritual experience, right? So that would be you jumping ahead.
Yeah.
The other thing would be, well, where did this thing come from? There's no curiosity about where it came from, who the founders were. In the first 4 years of Alcoholics Anonymous, they'd have this big book that they idolized. It's like almost like the Holy Grail. They carry it around with them and stuff. It's like the big book, which most of them, if you listen to them share and talk, they don't know nothing about what the book's talking about, because the book's talking about enlightenment and transformation. They're talking all this other mad stuff. But when you get into this, it's like, what were they using they used the book of James. They used the Sermon on the Mount, and they used First Corinthians.
The Bible.
They used the Bible, but I'm just saying there's certain sections this is directly from that. Confess your sins among one another. When they say first things first, what is it? Seek the kingdom of God first, and all things will be added unto you. These are all things and biblical principles.
Well, let me ask you a question. Sure. So when Bill started, they were in the Oxford group. The reason they went away from the Oxford group, this is just from the history, okay? Right. Bill said the problem was because it was a Christian organization, he felt it was very rigid, really hard for the alcoholic. Because in the Oxford group, they talked about the 4 absolutes: absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute love. So he said alcoholics can't be absolutely anything. And he thought it was just a little too rigid for the alcoholics. Sure. So that's what happened in the beginning. He started working with alcoholics aside from the Oxford.
Well, and he had other people in his ear, like Parker. He had other people that were trying to water it down. You know? So that's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, that in fairness, that's what, so he started. So I think something was lost in that, but he did put that back in step 6 and 7, where he started drilling down.
Well, you sent me that clip, and when Bill reaches out to Bob and he says, listen, I think you're right because see, they were having way more success over in the Oxford group than they were in New York. New York was going more leftist. I mean, it just is. It's more of a liberal place.
Akron, they were having higher success.
They were having more success than they were in New York.
Yes.
So New York turns around and so Bill starts seeing this, and there's a letter, and we can cite it, but it's in Liberty Magazine back in the day, and he writes to Bob, which is the other co-founder. It's Bill and Bob. And he says to Bob, he says, listen, I think you basically kind of conceding that he's right about the take it or leave it attitude, that we can't be all things to all men. And because he was realizing the success rate over there was way more than over here, because everybody was watering things down. Everybody was saying, well, it's okay. You can do this. You can do, and listen, man, and that's fine. But that's not the program Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not the 12 steps. The 12 steps are find a God, believe in a God, and start moving towards God, and then start doing God's work. That's what it is. Plain and simple. It's nothing else but that. But if you want to tell people it's this and that, well, the success rate, now what is the success rate?
Yeah, well, I'd have to check the numbers, but I know it's gone down significantly from what it was before.
Sure.
Well, a lot of here's the thing too. It's like, they moved away from the Oxford group. He started. You're right. You had Hank Parkhurst and Jim B, the atheist and the agnostic, telling Bill, you got to go easy on it. You got to go easy with these alcoholics. They're not going to be able to handle this all. And now they were handling it fine in Akron. Bob literally said, get on your knees and give your life to Jesus Christ. If you said that to somebody at AA today, their head would explode. But I'm just saying, regardless, the point. But he put it back in 6 and 7. And so what I'm picking up from people in AA is that they think that they can go really soft in the beginning, and then that they'll have a second surrender later when they're sober and their character defects start weighing them down, that or even like Katie said, a lot of them think that the spiritual awakening's coming at 12, so they soften it all in the beginning because they want the people to stay here. It's a con.
It's a con. They're not being honest because
it's social engineering.
See how you stay sober is because of the power of God. The power of God's what gets people sober, and that's why we tell our stories exactly how it happens. Now, I had a bright light experience. I don't know a lot of people have had it. I mean, and since I've been sober, nobody had. One other guy had a similar experience than I had. I had what they talk about, a complete rearrangement of emotions, kind of like what they talk about on 27 when you were talking about Carl Jung, that the whole thing is cast aside. A whole new way of, a whole new MO comes into place. I have knowledge of God. I know things that, that just release from the inside out because the thoughts and mind of Christ are within you. I have the gift of the Holy Spirit. I'm transformed. I'm walking around like that. That's very unusual. Very unusual.
That happened in one instant.
And that happened in one instant. And what happened for some of the co-founders, and reason why it happened for probably some of the co-founders on the bottom of We Agnostics, there's a story about a guy, Bill Dobbs was the alcoholic number 3, happened for him. But, remember, when the organization is expanding, God's working and moving in a certain way. What happens, the difference I would say in myself compared to a lot of other people, because of the educational variety, they can't tend to give the credit to people because their sponsor spent time with them. The book, I was so glad that the book was there. They tend to look more into, they tend to give credit to where it really has nothing to do with anything, because there is one who has all power, and that's God. So if it happens in a moment, it's completely God and had nothing to do with anybody else. Mm-hmm. So that I tend, and this is still my walk of not trying to hook in, because our problem always comes back to trying to be dependent.
Right. Well, but I want to drill down a little bit on this too, that, I think what happened, you called it, you said social engineering. Bill tried to make the big tent be all things to all people. He didn't want to, okay. And so now you've got a lot more people in AA that, you remember when Kobe Bryant said, you don't realize how great God is until you have a cross you can't pick up.
Absolutely.
And God picks that cross up and carries you and the cross home. I think what happens is a lot of people in AA, they haven't hit that place. They had a couple little bad things, maybe a DUI, maybe other people are ready for them to get sober, a judge, a husband, a wife. Not really them. They just had a couple bad, they weren't hopeless to the point where they needed God. So they're giving credit to people because they didn't go to God. They didn't ask God. They didn't have something that they couldn't manage or take. You know what I mean? Even when they tell their stories, they say, I hate war stories. I'm not going to get it. They're not even telling us like how hopeless, how bad their life was, how it was impossible for them to get to, and then telling what God did and the transformation. So I don't know that everybody's having that first step experience that you're talking about.
Right. Well, and if they don't have a true first step experience, they don't have a true third step experience. They don't have but basically they're not having the experience. If people are carrying that book around and swearing by it and doing everything that they're doing, and they're like, oh, this is basically the gospel, this book, and they're doing that, and then when you talk to them, they're not talking about any of that. They're talking about stuff like like people, places, things, all this stuff.
Like you say about Bruce Lee, when he says, the master points to the moon and the idiot worships the pointer. And that's what happens in AA. They worship the book. They worship the sponsor. Yeah.
Well, that's worth going over. In Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee goes to one of his people, and he goes, the kid, and he goes, what do you see? And he puts his finger out, and the kid sees the finger. He says, I see a finger, and he smacks him on the top of the head. He says, you miss out on all of God's heavenly glory by looking at the finger, not what it's pointing to. And that's what this all is about. Alcoholics Anonymous, the book, the people, everything is to point you to God, not the people. And everybody stops off a little ways in and goes, oh, thank you, people. Thank you, point. So they go back to worshiping. And what does it say? Worship. Why is the Ten Commandments some of the biggest things in the Ten Commandments? He starts out, don't put any false graven images. Don't any God before me. Why is that? Because that is the nature, including myself, all these years. My nature is to rest here and give you credit and lay back and give myself. And truthfully, I'm only giving myself credit. When they're blowing smoke up the sponsor's ass, when they're saying, I'm so grateful for you doing all this stuff for me, guess what you're doing? You're just blowing yourself up. This is because self is self. Self over there, self here, self wherever. It's still self. So for me, it's almost like a spiritual discipline of not giving credit to people, not giving credit to certain things.
Well, and it's an anonymous the whole point is
Right.
You're not right. It says principles over personalities.
Exactly.
God
Spiritual
is
foundation.
Exactly.
Spiritual
Exactly.
foundation.
Yeah.
That God's the one, not
God
Jimmy.
did this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then the people will say, right, the big one, they go, I stand on the
Backs of giants.
on the shoulders of
Shoulders
giants.
of giants,
It's
yeah.
like such ego. To me, they're like terrible ego statements. They're like, really?
Yeah.
Like one guy said, right? But we were just at the mid 46 years, whatever he's got. He's like, well, Bill, if we didn't have Bill, we wouldn't have a program. It's like, if we didn't have Bill, God would have got somebody else. He took two bums.
Yeah.
The only thing important about Bill and Bob was God. That's the only thing that made that relationship important. If it wasn't Bill and Bob, it could have been Sam and Jim. Wouldn't have mattered, because that's what was going to happen. And all of it comes from their desire, their outreach. It always comes from inside. I get sober from the inside out, not from the outside in. People are very deceived by that. They think all the outside stuff is getting them sober on the inside. It's the cry from my heart saying, I don't, and a lot of it is like the Roberto Duran fight, right? When he was fighting Sugar Ray, he says, no mas, no more. When you get to a place, no more in your life, God can work with that. It's like when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. So a lot of that, but we're gonna next week, right? We're gonna do a lot of drilling down on that, a little more history, a little bit more about transformation, and what else, Jen?
Okay, good.
You like that idea?
Yep.
So please subscribe. What would we do? Subscribe next week to the Average Joel podcast. We're gonna keep on with this whole thing about, and I'm gonna get more to I'm gonna get more into current events, because a lot of this what's happening here, what I'm talking about, is also happening worldwide. What's happening in the micro is the macro. What's happening with me personally is also happening as far as the groups of Alcoholics Anonymous, and what's also happening in the world. It is all pretty much synonymous. And one thing I would like to I can't see it. One thing I'd like to say is that responsibility and spirituality are synonymous. People don't a lot of that going on. We're going to get into that next week too. Also, a lot of blaming. They blame God. They blame all these other things. And the truth of the matter is they're negating responsibility for their own spiritual path.
Well, and some of that, not when they're if they can make you a hero, they can make you a zero. So a lot of it is they're blowing the sponsor up, and then as soon as they see that the sponsor's human, then they get a resentment with AA. Next thing you know, they're drunk. So they, if you don't get the real power,
exactly,
it's just a matter of time that
the great equalizer.
Yeah, that your power is going to fail you. So, okay, so. We're going to say like, share, and subscribe, but we might not have anything for you to like, share, and subscribe to yet. We're working on that, so that'll be next session.
Next session. All right. Take care. Bye.